You've probably been told the number that changes everything is $100,000 or maybe $1 million. Some milestone so distant, it barely feels like it belongs to you yet. Here's what nobody actually tells you. The number that truly rewires how you move through the world is much smaller. $10,000, not because of what it can buy, but because of what it proves about you the moment you cross it. You already know the advice, you've read it a dozen times over. What you haven't felt yet is the version of yourself waiting on the other side of it. And that journey starts with a number a lot closer to zero. Living with nothing saved, you wake up to the same figure you fell asleep staring at. $212. It hasn't changed overnight, but somehow it feels even smaller now in the daylight, with a whole day of decisions still stretched out ahead of you. Standing at the register at the grocery store, you're holding a carton of eggs. The store brand runs $3.49. The one beside it, with the farm logo and the smiling chicken, costs $5.29. You don't even need to think about which one lands in your cart. Your hand already knows. You've run this exact calculation so many times it no longer feels like arithmetic. It feels like pure instinct. Your phone buzzes in your back pocket. You already know what it is before you even glance down. Low balance alert. You check it anyway, standing there with the cheaper eggs in hand because some part of you needs to see the number confirmed before you'll actually believe it. Behind you in line, a woman scrolls her phone, laughing at something. You catch a glimpse of her screen, an advertisement for a Rolex Submariner with the black bezel. $9,000 easily. You're not exactly jealous, it's more like that ad is speaking a language you simply haven't learned yet. You slide your card into the reader and hold your breath for half a second, the way you always do, until it finally says approved. This is what nobody warns you about when you have nothing saved. It isn't one massive crisis, it's this. The eggs, the phone buzzing, the held breath at checkout, 100 tiny negotiations every single day, each one small enough to shrug off, all of them quietly stacking into something that sits in your chest like a low hum. You've stopped even noticing because it never actually shuts off. At work, Danielle from billing mentions she's been building up a cushion. She's not bragging about it, she says it the way people mention flossing, something you're technically supposed to do, something she's finally gotten around to doing. You nod like you completely understand. Technically you do, everyone does. Knowing was never actually the problem. Later, standing in the break room with a frozen meal spinning in the microwave, you look it up anyway. You read that most Americans couldn't come up with $1,000 if something went wrong tomorrow. Not without a credit card, not without asking someone for help, not without some plan they don't currently have. You read that when people are asked what would genuinely make them feel secure, they keep landing on the same figure. $10,000, not a million, not some fantasy sum. Just 10,000 like it's a locked door everyone's quietly hunting for the key to. You close the article. The microwave beeps. You don't bother writing the number down anywhere, you don't need to. It's already lodged in the same place the $212 lives, the same place the eggs live, the same place that held breath at checkout lives. Somewhere just beneath your ribs where you keep all the math you're running throughout the day without ever meaning to. $10,000. You let yourself think it clearly, once, the way you'd say a name aloud just to check if it's really yours. Then your break ends and the number goes quiet again. Not gone. Just waiting for tomorrow, when the paycheck lands and vanishes in the same 48 hours it always does. Friday morning arrives, and your phone buzzes differently this time. Not the low balance alert, the good one. Direct deposit, $1,140.18 from the urgent care clinic where you work the front desk. For about 4 seconds, even before you've climbed out of bed, you feel something close to wealthy. That feeling doesn't survive past breakfast. Rent auto drafts first, $780 gone before you've even had coffee. Then it's the small things, one after another, each one insignificant enough on its own to not really count. A delivery order Friday night because you're too exhausted to cook, $34 once you add the fees and tip. A quick store run that was supposed to be just shampoo and somehow turned into $61 of things you never walked in planning to buy. By Sunday, without a single purchase you'd honestly call reckless, you check your banking app and it reads $340. You're scrolling social media on the couch, half paying attention, when you spot Lauren, your old roommate from your second year of college, now doing something in marketing you never fully understood. She's unboxing a gold Cartier love bracelet, screws included, the camera even catching the tiny screwdriver charm that comes with it. Somewhere around $7,300. She isn't bragging, she's just holding her wrist toward the light, turning it slowly, like owning something like that is the most ordinary thing in the world. You don't hate her for it, that's the strange part. It isn't really envy. It's more like standing outside a house where a party's happening, hearing the sound of it through the door, unable to tell if you simply weren't invited or just never bought a ticket. You set the phone face down on the couch cushion. This is the loop, and you're inside it without ever consciously choosing to be. The paycheck lands, something inside you exhales, and that exhale is precisely when the spending happens. Not because you're careless, but because relief wants to be spent. You reach for the delivery app, the quick store run, the small thing that makes Friday night feel like it was worth surviving the whole week for. It isn't a character flaw, it's a reflex, built the exact same way any habit gets built. A trigger, a routine, a reward, repeated so many times it stopped feeling like a choice at all. Monday, at the front desk, a patient's card gets declined twice before he finally pays with cash, embarrassed, apologizing to no one in particular. You slide the receipt across without making it a moment. You know that walk back to the car, you've made it yourself, just in a different building. That night, you sit with a bank statement open on your laptop, scrolling back through the month, and you notice something you've never actually sat still long enough to notice before. It isn't one enormous mistake. There's no single $500 purchase you can point to and blame. It's 40 small ones. It's the loop running exactly the way it's built to run, week after week, taking that exhale and turning it into nothing. You close the laptop. Outside, your car sits parked under the streetlight, the same aging sedan you've had since community college. The check engine light that's been glowing for 3 weeks now because you keep telling yourself it's probably nothing. You haven't taken it in yet. You're hoping it stays that way a little longer. When an emergency meets $0, you finally take the car in on a Wednesday, mostly because it started making a sound on the highway you could no longer explain away. A low grinding noise, like something chewing on something it shouldn't be. The shop is a chain garage off the highway, fluorescent lighting, a television bolted to the wall playing a rerun nobody's actually watching. A young mechanic, maybe 25, grease staining his knuckles, walks out wiping his hands on a rag, and doesn't quite meet your eyes. The way people avoid eye contact when they know what they're about to say is going to cost you money. Transmission, he says, it's not something you can just patch. $2,800. You hear the number and your body reacts before your brain even catches up. A kind of static behind your eyes. Your stomach dropping the way it does on the first hill of a roller coaster. Except there's no ride, just the waiting room chair beneath you, and the muted television and the mechanic still standing there waiting for you to say something. You don't have $2,800, you have $340, and it's Wednesday, and payday is 6 days away. You already know what happens next before you even let yourself think it through. The credit card in your wallet, the one you signed up for during your sophomore year of college for a $20 gift card bonus with a limit of $3,500, has just enough room left. You hand it over, he runs it, it goes through. Relief and dread arrive in the exact same instant, which is a strange thing nobody ever warns you about. That card charges just over 20% interest, though you'd have to dig through the app to find the exact figure, and you never have. If you only make the minimum payment, $2,800 doesn't behave like $2,800. It behaves like a debt that grows while you sleep, quietly tacking on more than $50 a month just for existing. For years, if you let it. The car gets fixed that day, but the bill doesn't end that day. It just begins. Driving home, transmission repaired, engine running quiet again, you should feel relieved. You don't, not really. You keep doing math at every red light. How many paychecks? How many months? How much of every future Friday deposit is already spoken for by a Wednesday that hasn't even finished happening yet? You pass the luxury dealership on the way home, the one with the lot lit up gold even in broad daylight. There's a used SUV in the window, low mileage, sticker taped to the windshield reading $34,995. You're not even tempted, Not really, it's more that you notice how impossibly far away that number feels. Not impossible exactly, just from an entirely different planet than the one you're currently living on. The one where a transmission repair can knock the wind out of you for a full week. That night, you lie in bed running the same math you ran the night this all started, except the number is worse now. Not 212, closer to negative once the statement posts. You think about the low balance alert, the eggs, the held breath at the register. All of that was already hard. This is different. This is the moment you realize hard can always get harder. That zero was never actually the floor. That there's nothing beneath zero except more debt. You don't cry, you just lie there in the dark staring at the ceiling, running math that refuses to come out right. Something inside you quietly decides this can't keep happening. Not with any speeches, not with anyone watching. Just a decision made alone in the dark that something has to change. Sunday morning, you're sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee slowly going cold, laptop open, and instead of scrolling the way you usually do, you type something into the search bar you've never typed before. Best high-yield savings account. You don't tell a single person you're doing this, and that's the part that surprises you later, just how quiet it is. No announcement, no post, no one to celebrate with, just you, a Sunday, and a decision nobody's ever going to notice except you. You land on a well-known online bank, high-yield savings, no minimum balance, paying just over 4% right now, which sounds small until you actually think about what your current checking account pays you. Which is nothing, a number so close to zero it might as well not even have a percent sign attached. You fill out the form, routing number, account number, the same two numbers you've typed 100 times paying rent, except this time the money is moving toward you instead of away. $50, that's what you set the automatic transfer to. Not a bold number, not the kind of number that makes you feel like you fixed anything, just $50 sliding out of checking into this new account every payday, whether you remember it's happening or not. You almost talk yourself out of it. $50 is a delivery order and a tip. $50 is nothing compared to the $2,800 still sitting on your credit card, next to rent, next to everything already laying claim to your paycheck before it even lands. For a second, you think about closing the tab. You don't. At work Monday, you mention it to Rachel, who's covered the front desk alongside you for 2 years now, and is saving up for a wedding she hasn't set a date for yet. She doesn't make a big deal of it, she just nods and mentions she's got something similar going, some app that rounds up her purchases and drops the spare change into an account. She basically forgets exists. You didn't know that about her. You'd worked beside her for 2 years and never once talked about money, like it was something you were actually doing something about, rather than something simply happening to you. That night, you open the savings app again, mostly out of habit, expecting to see the same $50 sitting there. It's still just $50, of course it is, it's only been a day. But you sit with it a moment longer than the number really deserves, because it's the first time in longer than you can remember that a balance on a screen made you feel anything other than dread. You think about the SUV in the dealership window, the sticker price, how impossibly far it felt from the driver's seat of your own car. This isn't that. This isn't anywhere close to that. But it's the first $50 that's ever moved in the right direction on purpose. And there's something about doing it on purpose that feels entirely different from every accidental dollar that's ever slipped through your hands before. You don't know it yet, but this is the part that matters most. Not the $50 itself, but the proof that you can actually follow through on the thing you've been telling yourself you should do for years. You just know Friday's coming, and this time, before the delivery order, before the quick store run, $50 is already going to be gone from where it could be spent. You close the laptop. For the first time in a long while, the number in your head isn't 212 or 340 or 2,800. It's 50, and it's about to happen again. Months pass the way months tend to when nothing dramatic is happening, which is exactly the point. The $50 leaves every payday just like a bill, except this bill pays you. Some Fridays you notice it, most Fridays you don't, and that's precisely what makes it work. It's a Tuesday in early spring, and you're at the DM Vibe of all places, renewing your license, sitting in a molded plastic chair under lighting that makes everyone look faintly ill. Your number isn't called for another 20 minutes, so you open the savings app more out of boredom than anything else. $4,180. You sit up a little straighter. You don't remember it climbing this high. You remember the $50 arriving individually again and again, but you never actually sat down and watched them stack. There's the 50 you didn't spend on fast food for an entire month last fall. There's the $600 tax refund you actually deposited instead of blowing on a flight to visit your cousin. There's a stretch in January where you bumped the transfer up to $75 without really deciding to, just because checking felt like it could handle it. Your number gets called, you barely hear it. That night, you're telling your coworker Marcus about it, not bragging, just saying it out loud for the first time, the way you might mention finishing a book. He's the one who works the front desk with you on Thursdays, saving up for something he won't quite specify yet, and he says something that sticks with you. The first thousand's the hardest, after that it kind of pulls itself along. You don't fully understand what he means, not yet, but you start noticing it happening. By June, you're past $6,500, and it didn't take nearly as long to get from $4,000 to $6,000 as it did to get from 0 to $2,000. You aren't doing anything differently, the transfers are identical, but the account itself has started contributing. The bank pays you interest on the interest it already paid you, a little more each month than the last, quietly, without you ever asking it to. It isn't fast, it isn't dramatic, it's simply faster than it used to be. You think about the version of yourself at the repair shop, handing over a card because $2,800 might as well have been $28,000. That version of you is still in there somewhere, but he feels much farther away now, like someone you used to room with. One night, scrolling before bed, you see Danielle again. A different post this time, a photo from a work trip, wrist resting on a hotel balcony, railing somewhere lined with palm trees, the Cartier bracelet catching the light. You look at it the way you'd look at weather in a city you're not planning to visit. Not longing, just noticing. You open the savings app instead, $7,900. You do something you've never done before. You actually calculate how many more Fridays it'll take to cross 5 figures, and the number that comes back is smaller than you expected. Not months and months, weeks. You close the app and sit there a moment in the quiet of your apartment, feeling something you can't immediately name. It isn't excitement exactly, it's steadier than that. It's the particular unglamorous feeling of watching a decision you made alone on some random Sunday actually turn into something real. You don't tell anyone how close the numbers are getting. You just keep transferring the 50, then the 75, same as always, and let the account keep doing what it's been quietly learning to do this whole time. It happens on a Thursday, oddly enough, not the Friday you'd have guessed. You're waiting on a text back from a landlord about a place with better parking. Phone open to nothing in particular, and you check the savings app the way you check it now, out of reflex, not anxiety. $10,040. You don't gasp, you don't call anyone, you just sit there on the edge of your bed, looking at 5 digits that used to belong to a different kind of person than you thought you were. Then you set the phone face down and go make dinner, because that's the strange truth. Nobody tells you about this number, the moment doesn't announce itself. The universe doesn't do anything. You simply keep existing, except now you're existing with $10,040 you didn't have before. The real proof arrives 2 weeks later, in the same repair shop parking lot, same shop, different problem this time. The car needs brakes now, pads and rotors, $650. The mechanic gives you the number in the same flat tone he used for the transmission, time 8 months earlier. This time, your stomach doesn't drop, you just nod, hand him a debit card instead of a credit card, and go sit in that same molded plastic chair, scrolling your phone. Mildly annoyed by the wait and nothing more. Annoyed, not afraid. You barely notice the difference until you're driving home and realize you never once did the math at the red lights. The bigger shift happens at work. Your manager, a man who's run the clinic for 11 years and doesn't hand out compliments easily, mentions during your review that corporate is tightening budgets and raises might be modest this cycle. The old version of you would have nodded, said thank you, and left it at that, grateful just to still have the job. This time you hear yourself calmly say you'd like to talk about what modest actually means, specifically since you've taken on the scheduling for 2 providers since March. He blinks, then actually pulls up a spreadsheet. You walk away with $2 an hour more than what he originally offered. It isn't the money that surprises you, it's that you asked it all without your voice shaking because for once, you weren't negotiating like someone who couldn't afford to lose. That night, You find yourself doing something you've never done before, looking past the $10,000 just to see what's actually out there. A financial blog mentions that real compounding, the kind that genuinely changes a life, tends to show up around the $100,000 mark. You keep scrolling, half out of curiosity, and land on a listing for a waterfront 3-bedroom, $2.4 million, the kind of place where a private dock comes standard. Further down, an advertisement for a small private jet, the kind business owners fly themselves, somewhere north of 10 million used. You look at both the same way you looked at Danielle's bracelet all those months ago, not longing, just noticing, the way you'd notice weather in a country you'll probably never visit. You close the laptop. None of that is really what changed, not truly. What changed is smaller than a jet, smaller than a waterfront dock, even smaller than the $10,000 sitting in an account you now check out of habit instead of dread. What changed is that a version of you, on some forgotten Sunday, sat at a kitchen table and moved $50 somewhere it couldn't be spent, and kept doing it week after week without anyone watching, without anyone applauding. You still don't own the Rolex. You still drive the same car. Rent still hits the same day it always has. But you're no longer the person doing math at every red light. And somewhere beneath that, a quieter question is already starting to take shape. Not about the $10,000 behind you, but about what you're willing to prove to yourself next. The number was never really the point. You still remember $212 the way you'd remember a childhood phone number, not painful anymore, just there. The car still ticks in the driveway. Rent still hits the same day it always has. But you notice things differently now. The 40-cent gap between the two egg cartons doesn't decide anything for you anymore. It's just a gap. Danielle posts something new, a watch this time, and you scroll past it without your stomach doing what it might used to do. Tomorrow the transmission could still fail. The rent could still climb. None of that has disappeared. You simply don't run the math at red lights the same way anymore. Somewhere past this number sits another one, quieter, waiting. The same way 10,000 once waited, a door you haven't found yet with your name already written on the other side of it.